Welcome to Email After Hours by SenderScore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours.
Ever heard the phrase, more money, more problems? Well, for email marketers, that is definitely not the case. Inflation, layoffs, and overall tough economic conditions mean that companies are seriously cutting back on discretionary spending. This places more pressure on marketers who are working with limited budgets, just like a lot of their subscribers. When marketers don't have big budgets for expensive ad campaigns and fancy trade shows, they need to go back to the basics and pull out all the stops to optimize quote unquote free opportunities in the email ecosystem.
And today we're speaking with someone who's doing just that. It's a real pleasure to welcome an old friend of Validity, Jen Parton. Jen's a 20-year veteran in the email marketing space. She's currently Senior Manager of Email and SMS Marketing at Hickory Farms. In fact, she's told us before that she's a self-confessed email diva, and she knows her stuff. Jen, I know you've joined us before on our State of Email webinar series, but welcome to Email After Hours. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And wow, 20 years really ages me, doesn't it?
I know. I mean, I was there as well. I came from the print industry and, we had print customers going, hey, we're hearing about this new channel called Email Marketing and we want you to help us do it. That was how it happened for me. Anyway, so before we talk about all things email, we love to jump into these conversations with a couple of icebreakers. And I've got one that I'd love to put to you. I mean, you're in marketing now, but if you had to sort of cast your mind back all of those years, and let's say you had the job you wanted when you're about 5, where would you be today?
Oh, that's a pretty funny one. So my aspirations as a young child was to be a mailman or a mail lady, I'd say. My my father had his own business when I was young and would always get lots and lots of mail. And so the excitement of the day was going to check the mailbox. And so I always wanted to be a mailman and just deliver the mail. And even to this day, it's the highlight of my day, what's in the mailbox? I mean, it's more bills for me at this point, so it's not as exciting, but it is pretty funny though. And slightly ironic that I took the alternate path and went into email marketing and taking away from direct mail. So yeah, kind of full circle there. It's kind of funny.
I was about to say, but I mean, can you see the irony? Because I mean, you've still ended up in a career where you're delivering mail.
I know, right? It's very funny.
And I've got an icebreaker for you too, Jen. We're going to give you a double whammy of icebreakers today. And because Guy and I, we do love mistakes, especially email mistakes. We have a whole episode dedicated to that. What is one of your most memorable mistakes or maybe even stories from your earlier career in email marketing?
Yeah. So years ago, and if any of my former colleagues listen to this, they'll get a kick out of it too. Years ago, I worked for an educational company, and every year we published a calendar, a wall calendar for the teachers and some of the other clients that we worked with. And, we'd go through a very thorough proofing process, making sure that everything was, all the holidays were correct and everything was, spelled correctly. And it got through the cracks that Good Friday turned to Food Friday. So that was an error that was in the calendar. It was Food Friday. And to this day, every year on the anniversary of Food Friday on Facebook, there's a small group of us that are still connected and definitely roast the designer that had done that calendar that year. But it's always really fun. I mean, this was almost 18 years ago and we're still passing it around. And so that was kind of a fun mistake, but yeah, definitely memorable.
So let's ease ourselves into today's conversation and we'll start with the big picture. I think a lot of our listeners are probably familiar with Hickory Farms and know exactly who you are, but tell us a little bit about your customers. What do they look like and what do they want from your emails?
Yeah, so just a quick 30 seconds. Hickory Farms, historically, we've got our meat and cheese gift boxes and gift baskets. You've seen us in the malls at Christmas time, very seasonal business. I'd say that our demographic that we're talking to is a little older. So picture the people that grew up with Hickory Farms as like a holiday tradition, and they're still, interested in giving those gifts today. Again, very highly seasonal. I would say a majority of our subscribers are really tuned in the fourth quarter. So we always have our new product launch and our holiday gift launch in early October. So I'd say that's when people start paying attention and they're going to start sending their gifts for the holiday or scheduling them. You can do a buy now, ship later. But yeah, so I would say majority of our customers are looking for Christmas gifts. Now, that said, we have launched kind of all occasions, all year round gifting over the last few years. So we are like getting ready to launch our Valentine's collection. And then we move into Easter, Mother's Day, and then Father's Day is kind of the biggest one outside of Christmas.
I've just realized not only have you in a roundabout way realized your mailman or mailwoman childlike dream, but also Food Friday.
Yes, exactly. And I'd say meat and cheese, I would say, is my mothership. And, when I found this position here, I was like, could it get any better? Like, but it's hard to stare at meat and cheese gifts all day. I can tell you that.
Oh, well, speak for yourself, Jed. But generally speaking, and this is a question that comes up a lot when I'm speaking with my own clients that I work with, but tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with Hickory Farm's email program as it relates to consumer demand and sort of how has that changed over the last few years?
Yeah, we had some shifts. So in 2019 is when we really started launching our all occasions gifts and we saw demand increasing. And then during COVID, we really peaked as a business, just as people were missing their relatives. They were sending gifts. There was food insecurity. So food gifts were really popular. And for a couple of years there, we were really on a high. Since I say 22, we've started to see that consumer demand soften and just kind of overall demand for our category in terms of food gifts. This year was tough. Consumer demand, I think, across the whole retail spectrum was soft as people are, holding their budgets back and not spending as much. So we're just kind of reevaluating our program and seeing, do we pull back a little bit more in our quote off season and really just get ready to gear up for our Q4 and what other things do we need to do to really keep our list engaged throughout the year. So yeah, it's definitely changed over the last few years.
Absolutely. And I think, leading on from that, as you say, the marketing landscape's changed almost beyond recognition over the past few years. And I think it means that marketers like you having to try new tactics, but also revisiting some old ones as well, almost a case of back to basics. And I think that basically sets the scene for today's conversation. And we're going to talk about some of those back to basic tactics that have been working really well for you. So let's start with the first one. We're talking about time of day testing. And what's your approach been to this in terms of best time of day for your email customers? And what have you learned from the testing that you've done there?
Yeah, so historically, we were sending our emails. So we're in the central time zone, and we always sent our emails at 7 a.m. So 7 a.m. Central was the time that, we sent all our emails outside of the in season. Once we're in season, we're sending multiple times per day. But, we'd send at 7 a.m. and, that's because we always did that. And that's why, so we continued to do that. And then I started noticing so we use Salesforce Marketing Cloud as our ESP. They have some Einstein tools that they look at your emails, they look when people are opening. And I started noticing that the noon hour was really when people were engaging in the emails. So we did some testing and looked at, throughout the week, what time would be better. So we did some morning tests. We did against the noon hour, and then we did the evening. And we also segmented our list by kind of our more active group. So people that are more opening and clicking more frequently versus people that are more lapsed. And what we found was some really interesting information was like during the week, the noon hour was really the best hour for conversions for our active group. So it kind of makes a lot of sense. People aren't really shopping for gifts when they're waking up for the day. They're probably shopping when they're, on their lunch hour, midday. But our lapsed group wasn't responding to us in the middle of the day. They were responding in the evening. So they were, that was a better time for us. And then the weekend was a totally different story where our lapsed group was engaging with us in the middle of the day. No one wanted to hear from us in the morning. And then our more active group was in the evening. So we use that data to try to optimize the sends when we had one campaign going out a day, we would kind of split up and send at the appropriate times to help us kind of optimize those conversions.
That's so interesting. And I get, Guy, you're in the UK, and as I'm sure you're aware, not to brag, the US and Canada have a couple time zones here.
More than
And so,
one.
Jen, as your next back to basics hack, it kind of goes hand in hand with time of day testing, which is time zone testing, right? So you've done some of that testing recently. Tell us a little bit about the outcome of sending time zone personalized emails.
Yeah, so one of our first kind of aha moments was last season. So the Christmas of 22, and we started sending multiple times a day. And then we started doing a really late night send. So like 11 p.m. Central, which is then, 9 p.m. Pacific time. And someone, a couple of people on our team were like, well, we have some, we do have some people on our West Coast on our list. And so that got us thinking as we were doing some testing this year. We dug into our list. We don't have time zone for everyone in our list, but we do have some. It would have been hard to try to do zip codes and do that manually, but we did have some database stuff. And as we were querying our list for our retail locations, we were able to append some data and give ourselves some time zone data for about a 2/3 of our list, I'd say. And so what we did is, when we were sending multiple times a day, our cadence is kind of 7, 11, 3, 7. And what we did is we put the Pacific and Mountain Time group on a 3-hour delay so that they would be getting it at true 7 a.m. their time versus at, 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., depending on when we were sending. And we did see lifts in conversion doing that. So we kept that strategy. We used Journey Builder in the Marketing Cloud suite in order to segment that list. So it was really easy to set up journeys that would just hold anyone with a Mountain Time or Pacific time zone and put them down a different path, and found that was pretty successful. And we've kept that going.
That's so interesting. I know we do something similar with the promotional emails for our webinars, and we definitely drove up our registration rates once we started taking a time zone specific approach. So great to hear that it works for you as well. Now, next up, in terms of our key tactics today, is Gmail annotations. And I think for listeners who may not know, what we're talking about here is that annotations is basically a snippet of HTML code that's placed in an email header. And any emails appearing in the Gmail inbox, that code snippet displays pieces of important information from your email, like, for example, a % off or your offer expiration date. Makes them more meaningful and a little bit more visible. So, Jen, what appealed to you about annotations, and what did you learn from implementing it for your Gmail customers?
Yeah, I think anything we can do to stand out in the inbox is relevant at this time. With all that, we've talked about global email volume doubling since the pandemic. What can we do to get eyeballs on our emails? And we did some testing on the annotations, which, like you said, it was just a snippet of code that we would highlight if we were having a sale. It would show like the % off up to 25% off expires, and then it would tell you when. So it's driving urgency. And it also shows when something has expired. And then another thing that we did, we know that our email lister or our email group really enjoys, a deal. And we don't do a lot of sales per se, but when we launch our free shipping in the holiday season, that's really popular for us. So if we were not promoting anything else in an email, other than maybe we had a banner that free shipping on select gifts, we use the free shipping Google annotation to show up in the inbox so that people could see that, free shipping, and that usually draws people in. But yeah, and then with our Wicked Good Cupcake business, which is a company that we acquired a couple of years ago, we would use promo codes throughout the season. So we would have, like holiday 15 to get 15% off. And so we would highlight the actual promo code in the annotation that would get those eyeballs. There was a discount available. And we did some testing where using annotations versus not, and we definitely saw a lift in conversion for those that had annotations in them.
It's such an innovative way to stand out, too. I know we are going to get into other ways that Hickory Farms, was able to stand out in the inbox, but I love that one. I think it so often goes overlooked. I'm surprised that there aren't more annotated emails in my own inbox.
And it's a newer technology. We
Yeah.
recently actually met with Google. You can reach out to them and be part of their like secure senders or whatever you call it, and met with them and really got an understanding of annotations and how to use them. Like I said, it's newer. We had some clunkiness in Marketing Cloud on implementing them. So for anyone listening using Marketing Cloud, a quick tip here is build your email in Content Builder. And then once your email is done and tested, take that code. You're going to have to go to the code view, copy the code, create a new email in HTML paste that in there, and then you can put the annotation at the top under the header tag. You can't put it into Content Builder directly. So there's probably more about this online, but that was how we figured out how to use it. So it was a little bit of a workaround.
Geez, bless you, Jen. I'm sure you just made the day of, of people who are going to run into that exact same issue.
Yeah.
And in one of our episodes, we actually gave a shout out to Hickory Farms, specifically about, varied friendly froms during the holiday season, like Black Friday or Cyber Monday. So let's talk about the subject lines often, neglected relative and a critical piece of email real estate, and that is the friendly from. How effective were your holiday-specific friendly froms?
Yeah, and I think we started using these last holiday, and we implemented it again, and we do it throughout the year. But I think again, it's how do you get eyeballs in the inbox when you're trying to look, get brand recognition and what you're trying to portray if you have a sale or whatever. So yeah, we used Hickory Farms Black Friday, Hickory Farms Cyber Monday. We also, as I was mentioning earlier, people really like our free shipping. So if we're not advertising anything other than free shipping, Hickory Farms free shipping, or we would have, or Hickory Farms sale, so that, and we've seen a lot of other brands using updated friendly froms. It's a very easy thing, at least in Marketing Cloud, to create friendly froms. Another one that we've added is our CEO, Judy Ransford. So as we kick off our holiday season, our CEO letter is very popular with our customers because it's a letter from our CEO telling us, about the season and the new gifts that are going to launch. So we've used her name a few times to really get eyeballs in the inbox. And yeah, we did some testing and saw lifts with the personalized friendly from. And it's just another way to get people to see that outside of the subject line itself, that you've got something going on that's different.
I love that. Now, another often forgotten piece of email real estate is the pre-header. And you guys do a really great job with your pre-headers. I think a lot of thought goes into, how you make them effective, complementing your subject lines. Does that involve testing as well, pre-header testing? And sort of a double barrel question, but also, have you seen pre-headers from other brands that have really caught your attention because they think they're doing a great job?
Yeah, I don't think we did a lot of like A/B testing specifically on the pre-header, but we definitely use it, like you said, as important real estate. As people are scrolling through the inbox, it continues that story of what's going on. We use a little bit of humor. We've used emojis. I think that is the biggest one that stands out to me as I was scrolling through my personal inbox or my, on my phone or whatever. I know some people have a love-hate relationship with emojis and maybe it's overused, but one brand that I definitely saw during the holidays that was slaying the emoji game was Wayfair. And they just have a lot of fun. I remember looking at my inbox one day and seeing like red and green balls, across like all the way across the pre-header. And I was like, oh, what is this? And I opened it, and then of course I stole it and used it in my own emails.
Of course.
I was like, oh, I didn't even know we had these red and green circles that we could use. And then I used, snowflakes, and for our clearance sale, blue and silver, So yeah, I think that is just a fun way to keep people engaged, not overuse it, but when it's important and you have something, it definitely makes it stand out.
And we know that, you're a relatively small team over there in email for Hickory Farms. And because of that, your vendor relationships are really important. They're essentially an extension of your team. And so you'd have to imagine that in sort of getting back to basics and making sure you have everything you need, assessing your vendor relationships is part of that, right? So how do the vendors you work with help support you?
Yeah, so I think looking at your relationships with your partners and Also contract negotiations, and everyone, you guys are going to put earmuffs on as I talk, but no, I think it's really just looking at, because we were challenged with this year where, hey, our budgets are getting cut, or we have to flat renewals, and we're really challenged. We want to keep the relationships with the partners we have, but we also want to make sure that we're optimizing the contracts that we have. So I think it's, as you're going into contract renewals or even new partnerships, looking at the services that you're receiving. So maybe there's things you're not really using that you can get rid of that will, lower your costs. I think, as you're presented with a contract or your first pass at numbers, maybe push back a little bit and say, well, we really need to this is where we really need to be. Can you help me out and get there? I think another way to look at contracts is your payment terms. Even a lot of contracts will bill annually. And if there's a way to negotiate potentially, quarterly or biannual billing, that can help just with cash flow in terms of the company. And that can be seen as a very favorable renewal line item. And then lastly, I think it's, if you're looking at your vendors and your partners, if you're looking long-term that this is a partner you want to be with for a while, multi-year agreements can definitely be cost-effective, because companies if you're looking for the long haul, signing a 2 or 3 year agreement could definitely bring down your annual cost, just showing that partnership up front. So those are kind of the big ones that I look at when I'm going into negotiations and, just contracts in general.
That's great. I mean, some really good, solid commercial advice there. But actually, when you're talking about budgeting and cash spend, that applies to your customers as well. And especially when consumer demand is soft, when they're sitting on their hands a little bit, the temptation to increase your email frequency, hit them more regularly with more offers is quite strong. And, I'm sure you even appreciate a little bit of that pressure coming down from inside your own business. So how do you make sure you strike the right balance between maintaining regular communications and selling your products, but still ensuring that every message is still adding value to your customer experience?
Yeah, I think it's a game of quality over quantity. Historically, it was like, how many emails can we send? Who are we going to send? Let's send everything to everyone. And that's what we're going to do. But I think, and again, in a year of testing and a year of budgets are tight, when we're being charged for every message we're sending, we want to make sure that we're optimizing that. So in Q4, we definitely did a lot of testing with just targeted sends. Again, it sounds so basic and silly to say like, hey, this is actually a good tactic. But looking at past purchasers from a certain period, a fun one that we had was our launch of our cheese balls. So everyone loves our cheese balls, and they go crazy when our cheese balls and spreads launch for the season. They're only available during Q4 just because of the mailing or being able to send them in the hot weather is not great, not cost effective for us. Then, shipping stuff on ice and, you don't want a melted cheese ball. Anyway. No, so we actually sent an email to a very targeted group of people that had purchased cheese balls and spreads last year, and we sent it to them this year as a teaser. Hey, they're back, and the revenue that we drove from that email of only, I think it was 5,000 people. I mean, it was super small. Drove as much revenue as we would have sent to 1 million or 2 people, and it was kind of eye opening to be like, wow, okay, we can drive conversion. We've been pushing to really pull back and just prove out this quality over quantity. And we did a couple other tests like that through the season where we hadn't seen people purchase. They purchased during this same time frame last year, but hadn't purchased yet. What if we go out to this small group with a special deal, email exclusive, and what will that drive? And we saw success again from a couple of those sends. So that's something that we're really looking for as we're going into the new year, is how we can target more and pull back. So we're not just, sending everything out to everyone when they're not really interested.
I'm legitimately worried that the microphone picked up my stomach rumbling when you started talking about cheese balls. Oh, God.
I think that was my stomach.
This has been such a good conversation. And I think, on days like today, when it's been such a great conversation, almost feel sorry to get to this point and think that we've actually got to start wrapping up, but all good things come to an end, I guess. I've got one closing question for you, Jen. If you think back over the last year, the last 12 months, was there a biggest aha moment for you, sort of a realization or something you discovered as you were running your program?
I think the shift of the time of day was really the big one. It's kind of a dumb moment too, if you really think about it. But yeah, shifting to the noon hour, I think was really the biggest aha that we found. That's really that sweet spot for people that are looking to buy gifts. It's not 7 a.m. in the morning. It's more in the noon hour.
I've got a quick fire question for you too, Jen. And I think anybody who's listened to this podcast know that Guy and I will often joke about email being kind of like an acronym soup. There's just so many acronyms in the world of email. But what's one trend or maybe email buzzword that you are just ready to see retired? You've had enough.
Oh, 2 words, email blast.
Yeah.
Every time someone talks about an email, let's send an email blast. It's just like a knife to the heart of an a true email marketer. It like devalues what we're doing. And I feel like we try, like we said, quality over quantity. We're trying to target, we're trying to, see our customers and drive eyeballs in the inbox. But email blast is just something that I just hate that phrase. And every time I hear it, I just cringe. So we can get rid of that now.
Down with email blasts in 2024, everybody.
Yes.
And so say all of us. Jen Parton, it's been such a pleasure having you join us, myself and Danielle, on Email After Hours today. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been an awesome conversation. And,
great. Thank you for having me.
To our listeners, as always, join us again in 2 weeks' time. We've got another fabulous episode lined up where we'll be speaking to Tyler Sullivan. He's a serial entrepreneur and a highly successful one. And he's learned how to harness the email channel very early on to get his new businesses off the ground, both in terms of promoting them, but also in terms of having great dialogue with his customers to ask them exactly what they want and then pivoting his business strategies to deliver that. It's going to be another fantastic conversation. Don't miss it. From the 3 of us today, bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours and see you next time.